Hello, 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 as RuPaul would say, and welcome to another episode of your favorite new podcast, Bingefest. As always, this is Kate Conroy, and you are Vinnie Civitillo. I just realized I completely changed up the way that I say hi.
It's okay. I think you're allowed
Yeah,
to, just keep people on their toes.
I like that. Yeah, hey everybody, it's Kate Conroy. Like, that just didn't even happen.
We've been doing, I'm not this show, but shows in general for so long that I've just got it like
I
etched in
know.
my mind.
100%. And I
Yeah.
don't even remember the correct number. I always have to say to you, how old is Chloe? Because we taped right before she was born.
Yeah. She is, by the time this airs, she'll be 7.
Damn, for
Yeah.
real?
Yeah. Maybe not even by the time this airs, like maybe like a week or two. I don't know.
Oh crap. I can't
Yeah.
believe it. 7 years we've been taping shows. This
I
is
know. I know. It's
who
crazy.
would have thought? Who
I
would have
know.
thought standing by the microwave in the second floor hallway of NJBIA, waiting for lunch, talking shit about shows,
Talking shit
and
about shows. I love it.
like that's what we
Comma
were
other
doing.
people, right?
Yeah. All right. Before we get started on today's episode, which is going to be Fargo season 5, which I cannot wait to dig into.
Yeah.
What are you currently binging? What are you currently watching?
Well, there's been enough of a gap in between the last time we recorded this show and now that I've binged a bunch. I'm gonna pick one, and it's a little apropos for this show or this episode, I should say, because so I am a really big fan of The Silence of the Lambs. Like I would say, The Silence of the Lambs is one of like maybe my 4 favorite movies.
That's
And
random.
I love it. I mean, it's very apropos to this show. You got that psychological thriller. Um,
Yeah.
but they released a new show, Clarice, in 2021
Oh.
about Clarice Starling, and it went completely under my radar. And I can't tell you how weird that is. Like I own everything. Like I'm constantly Googling because I really want to see when Manhunter is going to come out in 4K. And I don't want to miss like whatever limited edition they put out. So like the fact that they could put out an entire season of a show based on Clarice Starling and it would just, I would not have heard of it at all, just boggled my mind. I think I accidentally stumbled on it like maybe a month ago and I bought the thing up immediately and binged the season in a few nights. And it was good stuff. Like when a show gets canceled after one season, you put your expectations on the floor.
Yeah.
Not only that, you brace yourself for what's going to be like a cliffhanger ending that never gets, resolved.
Yeah.
Um Clarice did a fantastic job of following up on The Silence of the Lambs, fleshing out some of the characters. And it doesn't end in a cliffhanger. Like it wraps up its season long story. I'm going to assume they must have known that maybe they weren't coming back. It it resolved everything. It didn't feel rushed at the end. There's maybe like some plot points that they could have explored in future seasons, but it's nothing where I feel like, oh, we'll never know, this or anything like that. It was just a very well contained one season show.
It was a sequel?
I guess you could call it that. I mean, it's not really a sequel per se. It is in the sense that okay, as far as the books are concerned, The Silence of the Lambs is the second of the 4 books, and Hannibal, which comes after The
Oh.
Silence of the Lambs, takes place maybe like 10 years later. Um, so this takes place, I want to say, like 6 months after The Silence of the Lambs, and it really deals with Clarice, Jodie Foster's character from the movie,
Yeah.
her PTSD following the movie. Um, and she's put on a new case with Krenler, who is the. I mean, I know you haven't seen the movies, but Hannibal, he's the one that's played by Ray Liotta, and he's the one that like winds up eating his own brain. Um,
Almighty. That's a
yes,
thing? I don't.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So Krenler is awful in that movie, and Hannibal will always tell you that like he doesn't just eat random people; he prefers to eat the rude. And so,
Like Dexter? I've not seen Dexter either, but Dexter
oh, you
kills
should
bad
watch
people, right?
Dexter. I mean, Dexter's a little dark, but it's not like scary.
Okay.
Um, But yeah, Dexter kills like criminals. Hannibal, the rude. So
I
it's like
love it.
criminals is up here, the rude is like, So Prendler is,
Love it.
I mean, in this, in Clarice, he's, a good guy. And
Hmm.
in, I guess in the years to come, he's going to go downhill and become the Ray Liotta character. But at the end of the movie, Hannibal cuts open Ray Liotta's skull while he's still alive and like cuts out little pieces of his brain and fries it and feeds it to him. I know this is awful. This is the kind of thing that's going to earn us like an R rating just talking about this.
It's gonna
Um,
haunt my dreams, is what it's gonna do. Wait,
yeah.
he fries it as opposed to feeding it to him raw? Like what?
I mean, he puts it in some. I'm not a chef. I don't know. He puts it in some kind of pan, and like,
Pan
and
fries
Ray
it?
Liotta is so out of it at this point because like his skull is literally open and pieces of his brain are missing. That
How
like
is he
he's willing
not
to
dead?
do whatever Hannibal's telling him. Like, oh yeah, eat this. Oh yeah, sure.
How is he
Um,
not dead?
I mean, he's dying. Like, it doesn't take long after that. But, yeah,
That's insanity. That is
yeah.
fucking insanity.
And
Pardon
then
my
he's
French.
got Clarice drugged, kind of begging him to stop, and she's like telling him like, the border patrol has like 5 features about you. I'll tell you all of them if you just stop now.
Dude.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't even remember. Oh, right, because that's what I've been binging. Yeah. So Clarice was a great show. And actually, if you in particular would be fine watching it because it's really not like so Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs were not horror movies. They're like psychological thrillers.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
there's a bad dude, he's doing crime, and the focus is not on that. The focus is on the people trying to catch bad
Yeah.
dudes. So that's what this is. This is just a crime drama. Like there's a couple dead bodies in the beginning of the season that that we have to investigate. Just like any episode of, let's say, like, I don't know, like a CSI. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it was. This could have been like season 42 of CSI or whatever.
I was thinking that a more direct parallel would be the one with James Spader, The Blacklist, because
Yeah,
he's the bad guy who's helping the good guys find the even worse guy.
sure. Which is
The
what the
Blacklist,
Silence of the Lambs and Manhunter or Red Dragon are.
essentially. Yeah.
But there's no bad guy helping them out. Like they're an FBI team. They're investigating a serial killer. I won't give too much away there, but like they believe they're investigating like a serial killer kind of situation. Turns out to be like a little bigger than that. But yeah, it's one of those crime dramas. It's actually
Mm.
interesting because it takes place in 1991, 92, right after Silence of the Lambs. So, they're really like discovering DNA evidence kind of like early on.
I thought you were going to say something about the fashion, and I was like, tell me,
Well,
what
the
were the
fashion,
skirts
I don't know. If you've
like?
watched Silence of the Lambs, Clarice Starling is not the type that's going to show up to work in like something like the marvelous Mrs. Maisel dresses or anything.
You're right. No, you're right. But
Yeah,
do you remember that I think it was in the 90s, there was a particular hairstyle that women had that was kind
the
of
Rachel.
businessy, except for where it like went out. No, it was shorter than the Rachel, and it just was like all flippy. It was mostly
Okay,
business, except in the back where it was all flippy and fine.
okay.
Anyway,
I'll
very
I'll
specific.
I'll take a look. I'm not going to rewatch the whole season, but I'll drop in just to look at the female characters and see if I see any of that.
I'm gonna find it and I'm
Okay,
gonna send it to you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would not recommend this to you only because you haven't seen the movie that it's continuing. But I would tell you because Kate can't watch anything scary. I would
No, I
actually
don't.
say you would not be. It would not be terrible for you to watch Red Dragon and the Silence of the Lambs. Like there are some awful things going on, but you really don't like. It's not like horror. It's more like the gumshoe is trying to catch some bad dude.
I just put the haircut into the chat
All right, I'm
because
gonna.
that's how
All right,
quickly
hold on.
it took me to find it.
Sure.
But you're right. I probably would be fine watching stuff like that because I have watched Blacklist and I've watched some of those other darker shows. It's
Yeah,
really just the scariness. Like, I think I just can't handle horror, you know?
yeah. I mean, there's no gore or anything. I mean, in the Silence of the Lambs, there's just like a teeny tiny amount of gore, but not like anything that I think would really throw you off.
You're right. I
Looking at
mean,
this haircut right now, this is how 90s I am because I am so like a product of the 1990s. I'm like, this looks gorgeous. Why don't people still do this?
okay, I know that we're not going to have a YouTube per se, but I really want you to, if and when we turn this into a YouTube podcast, put that put that
Yeah,
picture up
sure.
because oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
amazing. And so many people in the 90s had that haircut. Like
Uh,
I was just thinking about that Ryan Reynolds show back when he was a TV guy. Two guys, a girl in a pizza place. The
sure.
girl had that
I loved
haircut.
that show. Yeah. It was funny. I discovered Ryan Reynolds like way before the rest of the world because nobody watched that show. Yeah.
Zero people watched that show. I didn't watch that show.
Mm.
Still haven't.
I was gonna say there was a season of Smallville where Chloe Sullivan had that haircut, and
Yes,
I
100%.
to bring up Alison Mack. I love talking about Alison Mack, but yeah.
I know you do. I know you do. What is she up to these days? Is she in prison?
No, she was on house arrest for a little while, but I think she's out.
Totally free. She got
I
off basically
I
scot
could
free
tell.
from.
I mean, I believe she's out. She was definitely on house arrest for
We
some
need to
amount of
Google
time,
this.
and it like that happened pre-pandemic. So you're talking like at least 5 years ago or so now.
For the listeners who don't know what the hell we're talking about, would you like to enlighten
Oh,
them?
sure, sure. This is the rabbit hole we're going down. The
Yep.
the path this conversation has followed.
Yep.
Allison Mack was the leader. No, not the leader. The second in command of a
The
sex
girl
cult.
getter.
Yeah, yeah.
She was the girl getter,
Yeah,
right?
it was a sex cult called Nexium. It began as a women's empowerment group, and I always say I'm endlessly fascinated by how you turn a women's empowerment group into a sex cult. But they pulled it off. They did it.
The
And
internet calls it a multi-level marketing company.
wow. I mean, it's just the level
Soft.
of, like how many different things this could be. But yeah, Alison Mack, who is primarily known as Chloe Sullivan on Smallville, was the second in command. She was kind of in charge of finding women, starving them to get them to the body type that was it Keith Raniere? Was that the guy's name? Yeah,
I
I
have
want to
no
say Keith
idea.
Raniere liked, and then they would
Yes.
have it was kind of like a ceremony where they would sear their initials into their
They would
um
brand them
yeah, they
like
were branded
cattle.
with like a logo that combined KR and AM into their pubic area forever.
Lovely. It's really
Yeah,
classy.
yeah.
So this is what the internet says to the question, what has happened
Sure.
to Alison Mack? She was sentenced to 3 years in prison. And she was released on Monday. That was July of 2023.
Wow. So I
So
mean,
she served time, I
this
think.
is this is going to be like a weird thing to say, but I mean, technically speaking, Alison Mack was herself a victim of this.
I
Now,
agree.
now,
Yeah.
like when we say victim, I mean there are people who were far worse victims who were victimized, like worse than she was probably, but
100%.
but she was still a victim of a what do you call them? The cult leaders that, rope
Mhm.
people in and yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Wait, pause for a second.
sure.
Okay, speaking of rabbit holes, here we go.
Yeah,
Get
no,
ready.
let's do it.
Allison Mack's spouse, according to the internet, Allison Mack's
The girl
spouse
from
is a
Battlestar Galactica.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, as annoying as Callie was on Battlestar Galactica, even though she was right the whole time, everybody just wanted to slap her all the time. I cannot believe that that is randomly who Allison Mack is now married to. And according to this, she was also in the cult.
Yes. So their marriage isn't like a real marriage. It was just to get her into the country so that she could, be in the cult. Like it had nothing.
No.
Yeah, like you could look that up. That's yeah. I mean maybe after a while. No, because they wouldn't be allowed to be together. No, because part of Alison Mack's probation is that she's not allowed to like have any interaction with anybody from the cult. So
Yes. To
yeah.
help her circumvent US immigration laws. Oh my good God.
Yeah. So I'm like those are the lengths that they were willing to go to bring people in for this cult. Like there's
Wait.
no
Oh my
saying
gosh.
no to the Nexium sex cult. Sorry, I can't get in the country. Oh no.
This
I'll
says
marry you.
following Rainier's 2019 conviction of human trafficking and sexual abuse, Klein, that's Callie,
Right.
continued to support Rainier and advocated for his release.
Yeah.
Klein was part of the remaining NXIVM members and continued to defend him and its practice.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
when you're sucked into a cult, I mean, you're there. I mean, remember
that's
when
so
they were chasing Rainier and Alison Mack is chasing the cops. Like there was a
right,
high speed chase, and
right.
then Alison Mack had her own high speed chase. Like they were chasing him and she was chasing them. I mean,
God.
there's so many different layers to this onion. Like,
Yeah,
yeah. Anyway, what have you been binging?
right, right. Okay. So, one of my favorite TV critics used to be the guy at the Star Ledger, Alan Sepinwall, who's really, really, I was going to say smart, but I don't know him personally, but his TV taste really aligned with my TV taste. I trust him. And he wrote an article about Welcome to Wrexham. And I kind of never gave Welcome to Wrexham any thought because I'm not a sports person. But I did love Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
He wrote the most lovely review of season 3 of Waiting for Wrexham. So I gave it a shot. I watched like the first episode, and by the end of the first episode, I was totally hooked. And I'm now watching a documentary about football, like Welsh football. That is so not me. But
Let me ask you a question because I've
yeah.
never heard of the show. Is Welsh football soccer or is it like
Yes, you've
soccer?
never heard of the show Welcome to Wrexham?
No, what channel is
Oh my
I know
gosh.
it's not a
It's on
channel. What
Hulu.
yeah, Hulu. Okay.
It's on Hulu. And what it is, um, Rob McElhaney and Ryan Reynolds buy a Welsh football team, soccer, and the team is doing poorly. Like it is at the bottom of the bottom. And they rehabilitate the team for pretty altruistic reasons. Like Rob grew up in Philadelphia, and the Eagles are a big part of the local economy and the local spirit. And I mean, you and I have made jokes about the Eagles for years. Maybe we
Yeah.
shouldn't on on the show, but
Why shouldn't we?
yeah, I don't know. You're right.
I
I
mean,
mean,
maybe
just
not
because
this
of
episode because there's not a lot of relevance to this episode. But
you
sure,
know,
one day when like the Eagles come up,
yeah.
I'll be lying in
So
wait.
yeah, me too. I mean, what other football stadium has a prison, has a
Yeah.
boogie in it? I mean, really. So anyway, Rob talks really passionately about how growing up, the Eagles were a big part of like their identity and their culture, and Wrexham didn't have it. They've got this football team that everybody loves, but he was doing so poorly, and they decided to just rehabilitate it. Um, and so you get to know the fans and the players and the coaches, and everybody's got a really cool, interesting story, and it's just lovely. And the problem is, I mean, it's not a problem, but I really enjoy my British television,
Sure.
and listening to the people made me miss the accents of some of the other shows that I love.
Mm.
So I started to rewatch a show called Gavin and Stacey, which is partially set in Wales. It's about this couple who have been talking to each other on the phone for like 6 months because they work for companies that do business together. And she's like the billing person and he's the whatever. And they strike up a friendship and then a romance. And the very first episode is them meeting for the first time. They've each like traveled to London to meet and they fall in love, but their families kind of clash and their best friends hate each other. And it's a romantic comedy, to be sure, but it is one of the most lovely pieces of storytelling. It's just, oh my gosh, I love it so much. And so I rewatched that. James Corden, my friend James Corden, who
Sure.
used to be on Late Night,
Yeah.
he co-created and wrote the show. He
Oh, okay.
plays the best friend of Gavin, and it's wonderful. And
Awesome.
that led me down into rewatching Fleabag season 2,
Fleabag.
which is just some of the most brilliant piece of writing and so poignant and sad. And at the end, when I can't give it away as a spoiler. Well, no, don't we have a rule that if it's been more than a
Three
year, it's
years.
not a spoiler? 3 years?
3 years. 3 years.
has Fleabag been done for
Fleabag
more
has
than?
been way off the air for 3 years because I remember
Okay.
you told me to watch that pre-pandemic. So
Did I? Oh my
yeah,
God. Do you remember when I told Alice, our
yeah.
CFO, to watch and the
Our
first
head of
episode?
HR, shout out to Alice Gens, right?
Alice
So
Gens!
our head of HR, you had recommended the show to, and I want to say the
Yes.
first episode of that show is where Fleabag is talking about how the guy like F's her in the A. And
Yes!
yeah, she
Which
goes
I
off
had
on this
forgotten about.
whole rabbit hole tangent talking about it. Like, it's not just like a passing thing. It's
No.
yeah.
No,
I
I
think
had
there's a
had
point where
forgotten
she's like,
about.
"Oh, he's fucking me in the ass. Oh, he's fucking me in the ass." And like, you were so horribly embarrassed. Yeah.
Well, because I recommended this show, and then the very next day, Alice came by my office and she was like, "I wasn't expecting that."
Yeah. You don't often get coworkers recommending things like that to you. I mean, I did, but like, it's a little different. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So then Fleabag led me to Doctor Who, which
Yeah.
I the only season of Doctor Who that I haven't seen, I thought was the one that just dropped on Disney. So
Mm.
I finished that one last night and I'm rewatching from the beginning all the way back to, not the way beginning from the 60s, but the Christopher
Yeah.
Eccleston. Yeah, so I just got to the David Tennant years.
Let me ask you something.
I'm loving it.
Is
Yes.
everything prior to that season, is any of that canon? Or is it like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
so it's all
There
canon? Because I kind of thought that when they started that season with Eccleston, that was kind of like a new beginning, like more than just like a jumping on point, but like, we're wiping the slate
it's
clean.
both.
Yeah.
It's both. Yeah. So there hadn't been a Doctor Who for, I don't know, 30 years or something. I don't
Mhm.
remember. And then they revitalized the show with Christopher Eccleston. But they still reference things that happened in the 60s. Not often,
Okay.
but every once in a while they do. And they'll bring back characters like the companion from the 1960s is now an older woman, and they brought her back as in a cameo way to be like, oh, I remember when we did this, and I can help you do the thing with the thing, and you know
Does
anyway.
he ever like still
So
care about like old companions, or is it just like, no,
yeah,
sorry, I dropped you, goodbye? Because like it just seems so weird that he would be like, all right, well, we were like the best of friends, and then I'm never gonna talk to you again.
it is weird, but they kind of address that. Like there are some companions that didn't want to leave, and there are some companions who left because it was time to get on with their own life. And there were some companions that there were romantic feelings on one side, but not the other. And
Mhm.
so the companion was like, I need to remove myself from this because it's just going to get harder and harder.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, I've been deep into Doctor Who. And then the last show is another British. I know, like literally, it's all British all the time at my house.
Sure.
Have you heard of a show called Trying?
No.
Oh my God, it's so lovely and adorable. So it's about this British couple who are trying to have a baby and failing. And so they then start to try to adopt. And God, I just spoiled it. I'm sorry. You should like bleep me out. It is so wonderful. And it is on Apple, and it is Apple's very first attempt at a British comedy. And they are doing so, so good. It is
Okay.
lovely and wonderful. Trying.
All right. I finished. I mean, just speaking of UK shows, I finished Ghosts. They ran their series finale.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
that too. Wait, not
Yeah.
series. No, it's coming back next year, right?
No, American
Shut.
Ghosts will come back, but
Oh,
British Ghosts is done.
British Ghost is done, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's a
And I
bummer.
didn't
I loved
realize
that
that
show.
going into, because I just have this stuff built up on the queue, and so I think I was actually like 2 seasons behind. So I'm watching the 2 seasons, and then as we're getting towards that last episode, I was like, this feels like the kind of thing they could go out on. And I know in Britain it's different. They don't do like 10 years of a show. They kind of
Yeah.
do like 1 or 2 years, and then they're like, all right, we're good. By the end of the episode, like the end of the season, there's like a definitiveness where I was like, oh yeah, this could definitely be the series finale. And then I looked it up, and sure enough, that's what it was. So
I
yeah,
haven't thought about the British ghosts in since I finished like that second season, second
yeah.
series. I forgot that it is the reason that American Ghosts exists. I gotta go back to it.
Yeah.
That was a great show.
And it's just as good, like in
Yeah.
fact, you could make an argument that it's better because so
Yeah.
many, like especially from that first season, so much of what they did on American Ghost was just cribbing, like plagiarizing, like word for
Oh
word.
yeah.
We're just gonna
Oh
drop the
yeah.
accents, from the British
100%.
version. Yeah.
Sidebar.
Hmm.
You mentioned the queue.
Hmm.
Whoever whoever develops an app that will allow me to place in queue all the shows that I need to remember, they're going to be a millionaire.
Remember or watch? Because like, are you saying you would watch it
Remember.
from the queue or just have like a thing where you're
No,
like,
I
oh,
just need to remember that.
I'm absolutely certain you could. First of all, you could do that on IMDb. Just click the little plus logo next to the thing, and
That's
you'll have a
not
want list or a watch list. Sorry.
really.
Yeah. I mean, you just don't do it with movies. You could just do it with TV shows.
Have I been missing out on this the whole time? Like
I
when you say
guess. I mean,
queue, do you just have like a list in your phone of shows you want to watch?
well, I mean, I'm more the type like I like to buy my media, like I like to own it. I like to be able to go back
Yeah,
and watch later. So I
me
had
too.
bought the Ghost show, like the British show, when it was on sale. So like it might be like $5 to $10 for a season, and I'm like that's totally reasonable. So like I'll buy that, and then it's in the queue of stuff that I've bought. Like there's a list there, and
Oh, I
so
see,
every
like in
once in a while
Movies
I'll go
Anywhere.
back and I'll go through and I'll be like, all right, what haven't I
What haven't
watched?
I?
Yeah.
Makes sense. That makes
And I'll
sense.
go from app to app too. It's like, I've got stuff built up on Hulu and Apple and all that.
Hmm.
Um, but we
All
should
right, I
probably
feel
talk
like
about Fargo. It's
this has been 30 minutes of just bullshit. So you're right,
yeah.
we probably should talk about Fargo. All right. So, I consider myself to be a fan. You shockingly, it's embarrassing really, don't consider yourself to be a fan of the show, which is
I mean,
just
okay, I don't want to make it sound like I don't like the show. I love the show.
I know
I
you
like the
like
show a lot.
you love
Um,
it, but you don't like watch it
I mean,
immediately.
I watch it, like, I'm caught up, but like it was one
You
of
let
those
it sit.
things where a new season comes out and, like you, I'll let it finish before I watch it. Sometimes I'll let it finish and then it stays finished for a while before I get to it. It's not the kind of thing where like I can't wait for that next episode to drop. Um,
So I felt exactly the opposite. I watched the first episode not realizing that it hadn't finished. And I was so into it that I had to just wait week by week to watch it. And there was one
sure,
episode that I watched twice because it was so, so good. Okay,
yeah,
but before we get into that, should I just synopsize this season?
sure.
All right. So it centers on a housewife, Dot, in Scandia, Minnesota, which I have been to, by the way.
Hmm,
It's a lovely little town.
sure.
She's married to this kind of milk toast sort of guy, and they've got a daughter. I don't get it, but they love each other and they love their little kid. And his mother
Hey,
is
you
sort of
don't
this
get it?
domeoneering. Yeah, I don't understand her attraction to him. I
I
understand why
mean,
she,
coming
like,
from like the John Hamm from Mad Men,
yes,
like you don't get it,
okay.
like.
I mean, I do, but it still just doesn't.
It
Yeah, I don't
made
get it.
perfect sense to me. Okay, so she comes from an abusive relationship, and
Yes,
then she finds a guy who's a good guy, like somebody who's going to treat her right, somebody who's not going to knock her around, somebody who's not going to take her for granted. Why do women not like these things?
you're right. You're 100% right.
Sorry, go
I did
ahead.
not find him to be, no, you're 100% right. I
Yeah,
didn't find him to be like super attractive, but every single other aspect of him was lovely and wonderful.
there you
And you're
go.
right. Yeah. So it turns out that Dot has a secret past that we don't really know about. Her husband certainly doesn't know about it. And there is some kind of a riot in the very first episode at a school board meeting. And she just wants to get out of there with her kid, but there is a riot going on, and she happens to have a taser with her. And she accidentally tases a police officer. And as soon as she does it, she's like, oh shit.
Yeah,
She gets arrested, fingerprinted. She's suddenly in the system, which hadn't been since she left her abusive husband, who is a sheriff in a neighboring state, North Dakota, and her fingerprints pop up. He suddenly knows exactly where she is, and he wants her back. And that is the premise of season 5.
Yeah. So actually, when I when I finally did sit down to watch Fargo season 5, the reason that I had like said, all right, I'm putting this on now, um, I had a night to myself, which is rare when you got a young kid.
Hmm.
So I had noticed that Fargo, Shout Factory had put out, a brand new definitive 4K edition of Fargo, and that went under my radar. And when I learned about it, I was like, oh, I got to check that out. So I picked it up and I made like a whole night of it. Like I told you, I went out and got cheesy tater tots from Sonic. That was the closest thing I could get to tater tot hot dish, which I
I'm
understand is like the definitive Minnesotan eats, you know. So
so proud
yeah, so I got that,
of
put on Fargo on the big screen, and I had forgotten how much I loved that movie. It
you.
was such a great movie, and when I finished it, I was like, oh, I want more. And then I remembered I've got Fargo season 5 on the queue. I got to check that out. So I went right into the first episode. And the beauty of doing it that way, I don't know if this has been a thing throughout past seasons, but there were so many references to the Fargo
I
movie
know.
in Fargo season 5. In
There
fact, I
weren't.
texted you right away and I was like, are they
Yes,
remaking this? Because in the beginning, before it takes like a hard left turn with Dot, you think that they're doing pretty much the same thing.
I
And then,
know.
yeah, of course, it takes a hard left turn. But even after that, there are still references to
I
the
know.
movie.
This is
Yeah.
the first season that Noah Hawley has done that.
Okay. So it's not like if I go back
Yeah.
and rewatch seasons 1 through 4.
Nope.
Okay. Because I was about
No.
to do it. I was going to do it. I
I
was going
know.
to.
You should anyway. You
Yeah, I
should
should.
anyway because they're
I should.
brilliant. But no, this is the first season that he's done that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what were
The
your. Okay, go ahead.
So I have to say the only thing that I didn't like about like from start to finish, it was brilliant. Brilliant. I don't believe there has ever been a riot at a school board meeting in the state of Minnesota in the history of time.
Maybe just in the state of
Like,
Minnesota.
we're
I mean, I'm
just too
sure there
nice.
hasn't been a riot to that extent.
We're
I
just
mean,
too nice.
anywhere in the country, because it would be too funny for us not to know about.
Right, but I understand that the series had to kick off somehow. There had to be some reason to get her fingerprints into the system.
Yeah.
I forgive it. I forgive it. It's not Minnesotans are just too nice.
Minnesota nice.
We're
My
yeah,
understanding of Minnesota nice is that it's like, you sound nice, but like, there's some like,
100%.
yeah,
Yes, there's a little
there's a taser behind that nice.
yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think obviously the reason that she still carries the taser is because she's always sort of looking over her shoulder,
Of
right?
course, of course.
But I want to know the backstory of that riot because we
Yeah.
don't get to see the backstory. All we walk into the riot like it is just happening.
I think that in order to discuss this season, we're going to have to spoil at least some of it. Maybe we can
Yeah.
avoid the season finale, but I think
Okay.
in order to discuss this, we got to talk about the hard left turn that like she is not the mom from Fargo the movie that gets kidnapped, and it's just like the helpless doe. She is,
No.
as they say, a tiger. Like,
Tiger.
yeah, yeah.
So her ex-husband, Roy Tillman, who's the sheriff, is played by John Hamm, and he is about as far away from Dick Whitman. God, I almost couldn't remember Don Draper's name. He's about as far away from that as you can get. He's evil. He is such a good actor. He made me hate him.
The funny thing is, like, I don't always associate him with Mad Men. For some reason, I associate him more with the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, like as the sex cult,
And the cult leader.
like the cult leader, Durnsville's worst wedding DJ.
That. So
Yeah.
Noah Hawley said that he purposely cast John Hamm because of Mad Men, he is Americana. Like he is so deeply embedded in America that he wanted to do this very hard left turn with him as the bad guy, and he did a great
Oh
job.
yeah,
But
he plays a very natural bad guy. Like I'm surprised he's ever done anything else.
I know.
Uh,
So anyway, he immediately sends a couple of minions to Scandia, Minnesota to pick up his runaway wife, who is going by a different name. She goes by Dorothy or Dot, but her name when she was in North Dakota was, I just
Nadine.
said Dakota. Nadine, that's
Dakota.
right. Dakota. Oh yeah. And she turns into a tiger. I would also love the backstory on how she learned to fight because she can pick her way out of any lock. She can fight off. It doesn't matter how big they are. She can like destroy them.
I mean, it's
And she
funny. Like
does.
I think about there's definitely like a guerrilla warfare
Yeah.
thread to this. Like I think about Predator, Home Alone,
Yes.
Rambo.
Yes.
Like it sounds crazy, but like she's this housewife, and they show you how she thinks in one of the episodes of the season where I think she's at like a psychiatric hospital, and there's like guards at the door, and she immediately starts running through scenarios like, what if I did this? No, I'm caught. All right, what if I did this? And it's crazy because like, okay, in a scene that mirrors the movie, she trips down the stairs and you think, all right, they got her, and she's like out cold next to the laundry basket, and they come to grab her, and she just immediately swings up with an ice skate.
An ice skate.
Yeah, like her
Yeah.
kid's ice skate or something. Like it was obviously so planned. And then when she's preparing the house for their ultimate invasion, she's like rigging up, like a sledgehammer to the door. And I mean, it's straight out of Home Alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like she's this wizard of guerrilla warfare.
I would love to know how that came to be. And I mean, I have to guess that it's her upbringing. Like she there's a reason that she ended up in the Tillman household as a 15-year-old, right?
See, I guess I listen to how you say that, and it's definitely plausible that he married her because she was tough. But I also kind of looked at it as like, okay, she is, this escaped animal. I say
That's
animal,
right.
like, when you are like an
Yeah.
animal that has escaped from captivity, like there's a certain paranoia that comes with that. And I always just kind of, I always, for the last like week or two since I watched this, I assumed that, she had kind of in her mind, like, her husband does not know about her past, and so
No.
she can't say like, okay, I need to arm this house to the teeth with like guns and grenades and like the security system, but she can think of all these like guerrilla warfare ways that she could turn an everyday object into a murder weapon.
And she does. She turns a
Yeah,
lot of everyday objects into
yeah.
murder weapons.
I mean, there was the what was that was that hairspray that she puts
Yeah.
the lighter to and creates like a
Hairspray and a
flamethrower out of
lighter.
it. Yeah,
Yeah. And she sets that guy on fire. Like she
yeah,
sets him on fire.
yeah. And
Oh
it's
my God.
hilarious because the minions that Tillman sends, he tells them, "I need you to get this housewife," and the guy's like, "No, no, no! You didn't say. You said housewife. You didn't say tiger. You know,
Yeah.
this is a different job with different guys that you call
Yeah.
when you're
And
after
it
a
costs
tiger."
and it costs more. Like a housewife
Yeah,
is a housewife. A tiger
yeah,
costs more.
yeah.
Speaking of which, I want to circle all the way back later to the
Sure.
end, to that end scene with the Oli, the head minion, the
Yeah. The guy from
hitman
Stranger Things. Oh wait, do
henchman.
you watch Stranger Things?
Not
Because Stranger
anymore.
Things is like a little on the scary side.
It's too
That's
scary for
like the
me
thing
anymore.
he's known for.
I had no idea.
Oh, wait, 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 wait. I'm
Um,
wrong. I'm wrong. You're not talking about the son. The son is from Stranger Things. He's like Steve. He's like
oh no, I
no,
mean
you're talking about like the the mercenary that lived
yeah, the
forever or
Sin
whatever.
Eater. The
Yeah.
Sin Eater.
Oh.
Yeah. So, okay, there have always been elements of the supernatural in Fargo. Always.
The
I
show.
was not, yeah, the show.
Yeah,
I was
I don't
not
know. I don't know that
expecting
there was anything like that in the film, but I could be wrong.
there was, well, I would
No,
have to
right?
think about that.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so, but there were UFOs in season two. Um, it does, okay, so anyway, yes, there's always been like some elements of the supernatural. I was not expecting a sin eater, somebody who's been alive for 500 years.
Yeah. At first, I didn't think they were serious about that. Like I thought that they were just kind of making an analogy or something, and then no, they were like, no, he
No.
really has been alive for however long. Yeah.
Yeah. I loved that he had a code. Like, do you remember when he breaks into that old woman's house and he's like, I live here now? And she was like, okay.
Uh,
But then her son shows up and attacks her, and he takes that son out.
yeah.
Like it's
It's like
brutal.
the house guest that you didn't want, but then suddenly now he's all right.
Right.
I mean, not that she probably
I
wanted
know.
him killing the son, and actually didn't. I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, like
All right. All
yeah,
right.
I don't
So,
know.
let's talk about Jennifer Jason Leigh because I have
Sure.
never seen her like this.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God,
So
what
she
a
plays the
baller.
matriarch of the family.
Yes. She
Yeah,
plays Dot's mother-in-law.
yeah.
And so she is tough as nails, great businesswoman, but living in a world that doesn't always accept women in business, shockingly, even
Mm.
at this point in time. So there are two things. Do you remember the scene where Dot and she are having a conversation at the table and she's like pressing Dot really hard
Yeah.
and suddenly Dot drops the accent and she's like, "Listen, bitch." I was like, so Dot, I don't think is even from the Midwest. I don't know where she originated,
Well,
but
where was the sheriff from?
North Dakota, which is
North
the same
Dakota.
accent.
Yeah. I mean, it was I what I loved about that scene was that it was almost like a fugue state. Like she broke into like like the listen bitch, I'm not gonna let you, get in between me and the life I've created. And then she just snapped right out of it. Like, we're not gonna
Yes.
acknowledge that that happened. Like, we're just gonna go on and have the relationship that we're gonna
Yes.
have from here on out. Um, well, what are you talking about? Did I say something?
I don't know what you mean.
Yeah,
Would you like to stay
exactly.
for dinner?
Yeah.
It was so funny. And then the scene between the two most, well, I don't know if they're the two most powerful characters in the show. Biggest. They're the two biggest characters, I think. Roy Tillman and Lorraine, Jennifer Jason Leigh's character. He's basically like, "Ma'am, I'm here to take back what's mine." Jennifer Jason Leigh is like, "The fuck you are."
Yeah, which is, I mean, it was maybe the best part of the season for me was watching their relationship grow.
Yeah,
Dot
same.
and Lorraine, and seeing them go from people that were like, I don't want to say enemies, but maybe
They
enemies.
tolerated each other
Yeah, and
at the best.
that I don't want to say exactly where that relationship ends up, but throughout the course of the season, particularly after the officer who I guess leaves the
Yeah.
force tells her, like, she doesn't ask you for anything. I'm sure you got a lot of bloodsuckers in your life, that want this. She hasn't asked you for nothing, and now she needs help. And that was
Yeah.
the point where she was like, all right, fine, like,
Yeah.
and then it goes from there.
But Roy Tolman's speech about how she belongs to me, she's my property, blah blah blah. And Jennifer Jason Leigh is like, technically, she's been considered dead for 3 years. You're a widower.
Hmm.
God, what did she say? Something like, what is you are you are somebody who wants all of the power and none of the responsibility, and there's only one person in the world who has that. And Tillman is like the president, right? And he's got this smile on his face, like, yeah, I know, I'm so powerful. And Dorothy goes, not Dorothy, Lorraine, Jennifer Jason Leigh's character says, no, a baby. You're such a big baby.
Yeah.
And you can just see it. Like, he doesn't want to acknowledge it. He doesn't want to believe that, but she has really cut him off at the knees. It was just brilliant. And then their last scene together when he's in, well, I can't. Their last scene together when she's like, "Oh, I'm so wealthy. Do you know what I have just done? I have purchased, what did she say? I've purchased cigarettes for every person here, and they're all gonna fuck you."
Yes. Okay. You know what? Let's talk about like the ending of the show. I think if you haven't seen the ending of the show, by all means,
Stop here.
stop the play and go watch and then come back and like be there with us. But
Yes.
yes, like, so by the end of the show, Jennifer Jason Leigh's Roy Tillman is in jail, which I
Yeah.
didn't see happening. I mean, they shot him
I
enough times, like,
never
right? But,
was just gonna die on the land, but I
yeah.
love that he's gonna be in jail for an unlimited amount of time
uh,
suffering. I
yeah.
love it.
So Jennifer Jason Leigh's character essentially bribes every single person in the prison but him. And so the idea is like, I'm gonna keep your commissary stocked, like, we're gonna make everybody's lives in this prison very cush so that yours is not, like,
Yeah,
the
he's a
implication being that
genius.
they're gonna attack this guy on the regular. We
Yeah,
won't
and
kill
keep
him,
him
but we're gonna make
right.
sure that like he suffers every day for the rest of his life.
It was perfect. It was so beautiful,
Yeah.
given the suffering that he caused every single person in his own life, including his sons.
Yeah.
Maybe I think he only had one son, his son, his daughters,
Yeah.
his second wife,
Um,
no, his third wife, because his first wife escaped and got away.
so speaking of the son, because I thought you were talking about him before, but the guy from Stranger Things, what was his name? It was Gator or something, right? Was that it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Gator.
Um, so I think he got served up a fate worse than death by the end of this show, and it didn't seem fair. You know, like he was a bad guy, but not like a bad guy in a lot of ways. You know, like he was just.
Remind me, what was his fate?
I mean, they blind him. I think
Yeah,
he's like stumbling around in that
the
the
wilderness,
tunnel or
like
whatever,
yeah, the
and
tunnel.
doesn't he talk to Dot at one point, and she
Hmm.
tells him about how like she encountered his mom, and she didn't really want to give him away or anything like that, and then at the end she's just like, no, she didn't love you. I don't know. Like, was that a thing? Did that happen? Like,
I don't
am I just
know.
making that up? Like, I feel like she was like, no, I didn't meet her after all. Like, you know, she didn't want you.
Well, she was trying to, when she told him that she had met him, that when she told Gator that she had met his mother, she was trying to trick him into letting her go.
Right.
And then she came clean and said, "No, I really didn't, and I'm sorry." I don't think she was trying to be malicious. I think she was trying to come clean.
I think it was absolute. She did meet the mom. Like, you know, it wasn't like that didn't happen. The mom was the leader of that other cult, of the
Dude, that was
women
a dream.
with the puppets or whatever. That was not a dream.
Dude, it was a dream.
Was how were we supposed to think that that was a dream? Wait a minute, what
At the
happened there?
very, okay, sorry. At the very end of that, she wakes up in a hospital bed and you see the flashback to the car accident in the parking lot.
Right, I didn't think that that was a dream. I thought that that was just like she came
She,
back and she got hit by the car or whatever, like, or she walked out and got
no,
hit by. And I thought that the other one might have gotten hit too, but like maybe not. I don't
no.
know.
At the beginning
Oh,
of that episode, I know it's really sad. At the beginning of that episode, and the reason I'm speaking so definitively is because I looked it up because I couldn't believe
okay,
it. So at the beginning of that episode, she's sitting in that coffee shop having pie, I think. And then
yeah,
she goes out to the parking lot and there's a car accident and she gets hit by a car.
right.
And the next thing you know, she's driving to the thing. She's in a coma or something. She's
Oh,
like, yeah,
all right. So I guess that wasn't malicious then. I thought that that's what that
no,
was. Like, um,
no,
okay, all right. Well, then fine.
no,
That
no.
did seem odd that we were in this like cult with these like puppets and everything.
For the
They
puppets,
really
yeah.
made her like. She's like, "Do I have to make a puppet to
I
tell
know,
you my
right?
story?" And they're like, "Yes, you have to make the puppet." Like, you know. And so
That
you
was
see
a
her like
really
it's almost like a training montage. Like she's making the puppet.
I know. Like it was bizarre. It was so bizarre.
Uh,
And yeah, sadly it didn't
it
happen.
was
But
a
it
sad
was
story though. You know when she tells
so
the story of
sad.
like the abuse and everything. Yeah.
And her anger at Linda, the first wife who abandoned her, is so real.
Real in the sense that it was in a dream. I guess I don't know.
No, but she's still angry. She's
I
angry at
guess.
Gator's mother. I
Yeah.
mean, I would be too, right?
Yeah, but
I mean,
now
what she
it
says,
changes my entire perspective on the thing, knowing that
I
it was a
know.
dream. I don't know. I'll have to go
Yeah.
back, but yeah,
The fact that she says to Linda, "You fed me to him,"
yeah.
like as if she were just that, a piece of meat. Ugh.
Well, I guess it was a sacrifice. Like I'm gonna give you up so that I can get away, kind of a deal.
Oh yeah, and I think Linda planned it
Um,
that way. And I
maybe.
don't necessarily blame her, but it sucks.
Yeah. I mean,
Speaking
now.
of,
Go ahead.
no, you go.
I was gonna say now, knowing that it was a dream, like at least when I saw that whole thing, like I could be like, all right, I guess I get that, you know, she did what she had to do. But now knowing that it was a dream, like it changes my entire perspective on the character. I have to go
I
back and
know.
rewatch that.
I know. So when she was talking to Gator and she's like, I didn't really. I mean, she was literally trying to like mess with him so that he would let her escape. And
Mm,
she's like not atoning, but she's trying to like come clean to him.
I guess.
And I I am so on the fence about Gator.
Yeah.
Did he deserve his fate? I
I
don't
don't know. I
know.
mean, he did bad things for sure, but he was doing them because he really wanted his dad's approval. Like there was some
He was in a
psychological
cult.
trauma there. Yeah. Um, and by the
Yeah.
end, I don't. How does okay? So what happens to him after? Because the last thing I really remember from him was that he was blinded and he's like walking around in that tunnel, hitting his head on the wood and everything. Like
He gets
um.
arrested. Like the
Okay.
last thing we see of him is that he is sitting on the back of an ambulance with bandages across his
Yeah.
eyes. He's in cuffs, I think, and he and Dot are saying goodbye, and he says, "Will you visit me?" And she says, "Of course I will."
Okay. Because I had kind of taken it like, you know, let's say he get. I mean, there was the point where the dad tells him he's useless now, like
Yeah.
because he was blinded. So like that purpose in life that he had is stripped away, and he's I don't know. I took it as like it was a worse fate than maybe the character deserved. But Fargo has always been the kind of, let's say, movie and TV show where you really don't get away with anything. Like, if you do something, bad or even just illegal, I mean, yours is coming by the end.
And I think something that we have to remember is that we only saw a snippet of Gator's life. We have
Yeah,
no idea the kind of things that he has done
sure.
up until we met him.
Yeah. I mean, it's just I felt sympathetic for the character, and I was like, okay, jail, sure, but
Blind.
I mean, again, not just the blindness, but because I thought that she was being malicious, and she was like, no, the mom didn't love you, she just
Yeah.
ran away. Because before she was like, no, she wants you, she's
Yeah.
we can maybe get away and get to her, like there was that hope that was stripped away, and I thought that that was maybe part of it, but now that I know that it was a dream, I guess it changes everything now. Like my
I
whole
know it
my whole
does.
perspective on the ending changed, but yeah.
So I wonder if it's also like a metaphor. Like he was really blinded by wanting his father's love.
Mhm.
And now that he doesn't have his eyes anymore, he actually can see better.
Oh,
He
we're getting
really
deep now.
understands. I know, sorry.
It is a nice metaphor, yeah.
Yeah, I do feel
Mm.
bad. I mean, there are blind people in the world, people who were born blind and people who became blind, and they have active lives.
Right.
They're
So that's why I just
fulfilled.
want to make it
Like,
clear when I say a fate worse than death, I'm not just specifically talking
no, I
about the
know.
blindness. Yeah, yeah. It was the
I know.
fact
I
that like
know.
now he was useless to the father. Now like
Right.
he's being told like no, the mother really didn't love you. And
Right.
I remembered him just
The
like walking around
emotional.
in that tunnel blind, hitting his head on wood, like it was awful. It was awful. And I
It
didn't feel like the
was.
character earned that. But like you said, it was a whole lifetime of kind of just like maybe going
Being
along with what
shitty.
the dad said, and we don't know what he did. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
All right,
And
but go
now
ahead. You
I
were talking
think
about blindness in general. Go ahead.
so I actually think that he has a chance of actual happiness now, as long as he can survive prison, which probably with Dot on his side and Lorraine, they can make his prison life as easy as they're going to make Roy's life
I
difficult.
wonder if he's getting the commissary stocked.
I wonder if they're in the same facility.
Maybe. I mean, I can't. I have no idea how jail works, but like if two
Yeah, I
people
don't
from the
either.
comparable
Thank God.
area, yeah, are thrown in jail, I just kind of assumed they would go to the same general place. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
guess
probably
Orange
think
is
so
the New
too.
Black kind of put a different perspective on that. Like they were moving around a
Right.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Mm.
Oh my gosh.
Another
All
thing
right.
that I this is random to kind of go back, but it's sort of miscellaneous. The other cop, not the woman, but the other
Wit.
cop that she's in the convenience store with.
Convenience store with
Yeah,
Wit.
yeah, that was an interesting season-long story arc. Like he didn't understand like she was a hero, another guerrilla warfare kind of a situation. She was a hero in that convenience store, and he's like, why doesn't she want to own it? Like not only is she not like taking credit for it, like, it's one thing to be humble, but every time they're talking about it, she's just like, oh, that didn't happen. I don't know what you're talking about. That wasn't me. So there was that confusion that led him to kind of try to understand her more. He was an interesting character, and I was really sad for him in the end too because he gets killed, and I was
I
like,
know.
why? Like
So Fargo is the kind of show where senseless violence happens. And according to Noah Hawley, you are not supposed to want the violence. So when
I didn't. I wanted him to live. You
I know.
know?
So actually, I just listened to an interview between Alan Sepinwall, who now he used to be the Star Ledger TV critic, but now he works for Rolling Stone. He interviewed Noah Hawley, who's the creator of the show, about violence, about all kinds of things. And one of the questions was violence. And he talked about in season two, when you really want to see somebody get beat up, but the crime family sends the disabled kid to do it. And you're like, oh no, 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 no. Noah Hawley always wants you to root against the violence, which is such an interesting perspective to take when you're watching his storytelling, right? So that convenience store scene and every scene where Wit is in danger, I'm always like, no, no, no,
Uh,
no, no. Because he was such a good guy. He was such a good man. And it didn't matter because violence just it doesn't matter who you are. Violence will take you if you're in the way.
yeah. The cops in Fargo are always awesome. It's like the even the what was the name of the other one? The one that she's got like the
Oh
money
God.
problems and
It was
Indira?
Indian. Indira. I think it was
Indira.
Indira.
Okay. I don't even remember what I was gonna say. Oh, like okay, so there's always that stereotype or archetype, I should say, of the officer, the incorruptible,
Yeah.
the what was her name in the original in the movie, the
Marge
Marge
Gunderson. Oh
Gunderson. Oh
yeah, she's a
yeah, you
Marge
betcha.
Gunderson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was another one in the what was the season one of Fargo had one that was just like her, and I'm struggling to remember the name now, but uh
Wait, who was just like Marge?
yeah,
Season one.
the woman cop who,
Oh,
the main
yeah, Molly.
character. Yeah, Molly.
Molly
Okay.
Sulverson.
So like
Yeah.
there's always that like female cop that's incorruptible, that's amazing at her job, and
Yeah.
um yeah, I liked her this season. And it was kind of weird that like she did give up on like the force, because usually like in Fargo I would say like no, you cannot
It doesn't
be
happen.
the cop cannot be straight away from the righteous path, but in this case they did it. But
And I
uh,
think they did it for a really interesting reason. Like she had problems. She
yeah,
married a guy who was not a good person,
yeah,
and she clearly didn't know him well enough when she got married. And he was gonna, I mean, their savings was drained. And he was just starting on the credit card debt. Like he just couldn't grow up. He had that Peter Pan syndrome, I guess.
yeah.
And thank God that she was the kind of person that she was, because when Jennifer Jason Leigh started attacking her, it looked like she was going to be totally screwed over. And instead, she goes to work for Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Hmm.
And you're like, all the angels from heaven just sang down in the beautiful chorus. And you're like, it's lovely.
So I guess the only character we haven't talked about is the guy with the eye patch, the I guess the right hand man of Lorraine or whatever.
Oh, Dave Foley.
Yeah,
That's another
Danish,
guy.
right? Yeah.
Danish. That's another guy that I really wished hadn't had to meet the fate that he did. And I
Yeah,
couldn't believe it.
yeah.
Like, this is a guy who's a businessman. He's a lawyer. He's going into this guy's house to just talk about a business situation.
I've
I
gotten the
mean, you're right.
impression from this that he was more than that. Like, this is the
Yeah.
guy that's sent in to clean things up. Like, did you ever
Yeah.
see Reservoir? No, yeah, no, not Reservoir. Pulp Fiction. You had to have
He's a
seen Pulp
fixer.
Fiction, right? Yeah, he's like that
Yes.
guy
Loved
that's
it.
like sent in the wolf or
The
whatever to
Wolf.
just,
Winston Wolf.
fix
Yeah.
any problem, whatever is necessary. And you
He's a
you
fixer.
definitely get that impression that like the law has been bent or broken in the pursuit of fixing these issues. But did he
100%.
deserve to end up dead in a what was that, like a septic thing or whatever that was? Like, no.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
he didn't. And I couldn't believe the way Roy did it. Like that's when I realized he believes he's totally invincible. Like they're standing in Roy's office, Dave Foley, who I've been watching on TV for 40 years. Like he was one of the original kids in the hall. He's a genius. He's a comedic genius. And now he's like more of a character actor, but God, he's good. Standing in the office and Ray opens Roy opens his desk drawer, pulls out a gun, and shoots him.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who was more surprised, Dave Foley or me.
Yeah, so speaking of Invincible, is would this be the first time, at least in Fargo, that like somebody of the law was the bad guy?
Oh, that's a great question.
Because
That's a great
normally you've
question.
got the, like I said, like the law people that are the incorruptible, amazing at their job, just trying to get justice and all of that. And now they turned it on its head. And while yes, you still have a couple of those characters, you now also have the inverse, like the evil bizarro inverse of the law person.
I just looked it up. Bad
Yeah.
cops in Fargo.
I gotta
Who
tell
is the
you, like, I
bad
don't
cop?
remember a lot from this series. Like, brushstrokes, sure. I want to say my favorite season so far has been two. Season two was really the year that I decided that Kirsten Dunst deserves to have an Oscar one day. Like, she just
Yeah.
needs the right role. But, yeah.
100% agree.
Yeah.
100% agree.
I didn't respect her enough as an actress before that. I think it was like the Bring It On years really kind of like tainted it for me. But yeah,
Well,
I
when you're a
watched
child
that and I was like,
actor,
she is phenomenal. Well, even as a child
100%.
actor, she did better than like her teenage years because it was like the Interview with
She
the
did.
Vampire and all that. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So there was a cop in season 4, which was set in Memphis, Kansas City. He plays there's a detective Otis Weff, Kansas City Police Department with OCD and PTSD. He's on secretly on the payroll of one of the
Uh,
families.
all right. It's good that we mentioned that then. That little
Mm,
asterisk.
hmm
Is this the final season? Do we know?
So it's interesting. It could be. Basically, Noah Hawley said that he has an open invitation.
It's like the
When
Curb Your
he,
Enthusiasm of.
yes, when he thinks of another story to tell, he just calls them up and he's like, "Yeah, I have a story." And they're like, "Okay,
All right, you betcha.
yeah." So I'm hoping, I'm hoping not. I'm hoping that he's got like 5, 10 more stories in him because I'll just keep watching.
All right. Before we get to final thoughts on this season, you mentioned before that you have been to,
Yeah,
well, the season, the town that this took place in.
Scandia.
Is this really filmed in Minnesota, like, or is it
I
just
don't
kind
know
of
where
like
it's filmed.
California on a soundstage?
I don't know where
Because
it's
I'd love to
filmed.
know if like if you could drive by some of these filming locations, like just to see, kind of take those pictures and be like, hey, look, this is where this was.
I don't think
You don't
so.
care.
That makes me
It's
sad.
like,
I don't know. But wait, but before we get to final thoughts, I do want to talk about the final scene in
sure,
the final episode,
okay,
Bisquick. So the Sin Eater, whose name is Oli,
sure. We didn't really talk
or
enough about him.
Ole, I know he was so cool. That haircut alone, it was just so. But okay, so he has been hunting this tiger woman the whole season, and he helped her out a couple times because he felt like fair is fair, right?
Yeah.
And he shows up at her door a few months after the events have taken place. And he's there because he has a job to finish. And she basically says to him, "No, I don't think so.
Yeah, she kind of
You're,
brushes it off like entirely. Like, you can stay for dinner if you want.
yeah." She's basically like, "Listen, you accepted a job that had risk. That's not my fault. The job had risk, and the risk bit you in the ass, and that's it."
Yeah.
And he doesn't know what to do with it. He doesn't know how to respond. Nobody has ever spoken to him that way
So I
before.
imagined the way that she was thinking in her head, like going through all the different, like, this is what I could do, this is what I could do. And I imagined like that being the one path that gets me out of this is like not trying to attack him, but to
Right.
say like, like, look, let bygones be bygones, we could be friends, whatever you want. And then I guess we'll never really know, but she attempts to cure him in the end.
I
Of
think she
the
does.
Yeah, like so he's got this we'll call it like a vampire affliction where he's been alive for 500 years or whatever. And
Yes. And we never see him eat. The only thing he eats
I
is
thought
other
we did.
people's.
Oh, yeah, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I,
he's the sin
sh
eater. It's
Yeah.
just crazy.
Wait, didn't we see him eat the biscuit in the end?
That's when she cures him.
Yeah,
She
right.
gives him the
Yeah.
biscuit
Yeah.
and he eats it and he's better. He's mortal.
The cure is love, or eating
I
something that
know.
was made with love.
I
And he
know.
smiles.
Yes. And he helped make the biscuits.
Yeah,
She's like, it's supper time on a school night. So
sure.
you can come in, wash your hands, help us get dinner on the table. Supper. She calls it supper. Supper on the table.
So interesting that you should mention that that was the final scene, because so far throughout this series, the final scene of every season of Fargo has been some way that connected it back to another season. And it could just be that I haven't watched the other seasons in a long time, but I didn't see any connection between, other than the references to the film, I didn't see any connection between this season and the rest of the seasons. Was I missing something?
So I have to think about that, but my initial reaction
No
is
obvious
that,
thing though, right? Like not where they pulled out that last scene to be like, all right, and here's
yeah,
who this was 30 years later, or
no,
yeah,
no. The final scene in every season of Fargo has been the family coming back together and having a moment. In the movie, it was Marge and her husband in bed talking about 3 more months before the baby comes. Season one, it's Molly and Colin Hanks and their little family. This most recent season, it's them sitting around the supper table with Oli. Um, the only season that I think it didn't do, no, it did. Season two was Molly's parents. Kristen Dunst is in the cop car, and then
right.
it ends with them in bed and all the ships at sea. Good night, Mrs. Salverson. Good night, Mr. Salverson.
So maybe
Right?
not the final scene, but like last few scenes of every show. Like I feel like there was the scene where, was it season 2 or season 3, where it connects back to the first season and says like, here was the character, maybe this is her kids now.
It
um
definitely was. No,
Then there was a season where there was the kid from the, what was it, like the Chris
yes,
Rock season. The kid wound
yes,
up being like the adult from like
yes.
one of the previous.
You're right.
Like they
You're
always
right.
do that. Like at the end, I don't feel like there was. I mean, there wasn't anything
They didn't.
obvious like that
You're
this time
right.
around. I don't know that
No,
there
you're
was any
right.
connection at all throughout the series
You're right.
season at least.
Unless it was all the connections back to the movie, because it
And I
really
gotta
was
tell you, I did appreciate
so.
it. Oh, go ahead. Yeah,
No, just that there were so many nods to the movie, like
yeah,
the sliding glass door and her sitting on the couch knitting in front of the TV when they try to break in, and
and
there
looking
was just
in, yeah, and
so
then
many nods.
killing the guy with the axe, like
Oh my God,
outside.
right.
Yeah, there.
But sorry, go ahead.
No, I did appreciate that there wasn't some obvious like shoehorned in sort of like, and this is how
Yeah,
this person
yeah.
connects. It's Molly's granddaughter now, like anything like that.
No, you're right. But Molly's parents were the main characters of season two.
Right.
And Molly was a little girl in season two.
Yeah.
And that little boy grew up to be Bokeem Woodbine, the bad guy in season three.
Yeah.
No,
Or one of the
yes,
seasons. Yeah. Yeah.
one of
Yeah.
the
I think you're right.
seasons. I
Yeah.
can't remember.
No. Yeah. I think you're right. Unless he was he in season 2 with Kirsten Dunst? I can't remember. I
No,
just
that was the
remember.
multi.
I remember the thing that's always going to stick with me from
So
that
many.
season is how he advanced through the thing enough that he got like an office job, and he's like, "Wait, what's this?"
That will never leave me. Yeah, and he
Yeah,
was like bummed about it. There was no more like the fun parts of the job, like driving through the what do you call it? Driving through the
yeah.
wilderness looking for a guy that you're gonna kill.
There was this book I read once. One of our old coworkers, Steve Wilson, recommended it to me. Lucky Wander Boy, where this guy is obsessed with this video game, and he goes off and meets the person who made it, and it's this whole quest where he hears that there's a movie being made about it, so he wants to be involved, and he gets involved, and he gets higher up, and he gets higher up, until like he is now the right hand person of the woman who created the game. And all she does is she's in Japan, and she has like this sex dungeon where people come in to be spanked, and like the final stage of all of his working his way up is just like, she's like, well, you can spank people for a living if you'd like. That was sort of like the connection I made. Like the end is like this thing that you're just like, wait, what? Like
Yeah,
this whole
anticlimactic.
complete, yeah, this whole anticlimactic, like this has nothing to do with what I ever wanted, and it's not what I bargained for, and that was that for me. But yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. Even God, there was I think it was season one, the money that Steve Buscemi hides is found by the Oliver Platt character, the grocery store owner, and that's the connection back to the movie in season one. There's all of these little connections and
Hmm.
knots and ties. God, such a great show. All
Yeah.
right.
So
Last
final
thoughts?
thoughts. Yeah, final thoughts. What are your final thoughts on Fargo season 5?
Fargo, always and forever. Like I
Yeah.
will watch it until the end of time. In fact, if I don't already own it, I'm going to be buying it today because I
The,
need
the
to own
show?
it. And
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, it's just so perfection.
Yeah.
Actually, holy shit. You want to hear something? If
Sure.
it weren't for Fargo, this podcast wouldn't exist. Because the reason that I got into podcasts is because there was a recap podcast show of Fargo called Geez
Wow.
that was put out by Minnesota Public Radio. That's the first show I listened to. The first podcast show I ever listened to was Geez, Fargo recap
First of
show.
all, that's a perfect name for a show.
I know. I know. It is.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah,
so if you want to talk about like real butterfly effect kind of stuff, if it wasn't for that, there would
seriously.
be no other people's business. All right.
Nope.
Wow.
Nope. There would be no Take on Trenton. There would be no Planet New Jersey. Wasn't that the show?
I'll
Take on
pass on
Trenton?
commenting on Take on Trenton, but yes, there would be no
You loved that show, I thought.
Take on Trenton.
I'm
All right.
teasing.
This is like inside jokes for people that like we
Deep
don't
cut.
want to do that. Take
All
on
right,
Trenton
sorry.
was the show that I produced for NJBIA. It was good at the time, but there was
Yeah.
yeah.
It was like one hot
I
second
think there were
long.
like 4 episodes of the show, and then it went off the air. It
Yeah.
didn't have the staying
Anyway,
power of another people's business that went
no.
134, or even this show. We haven't, at the time that we're recording this, we haven't even started airing them yet. We already have 6 episodes.
You know what? I'm just having so much fun recording, like having the conversations.
Yeah.
I almost don't even care if we ever release
It's
them. I
funny
just want
because
to
like
keep
that's the
talking.
work. Like the editing the episodes together is the work. And I haven't gotten to
I'm
that
sorry.
part yet. I'm totally willing to get on the air and like do this. You
Ah,
know. Um
that's so funny.
it also doesn't help that
Um,
it's like a what do you call it?
Labor of
Like a
love.
for fun. Yeah, like a labor.
Yeah.
It's not like a professional thing where I have like an
No,
obligation.
no,
But
there's
once
no
we get there,
obligation.
by the time you're hearing this, there's been a groove of these things coming out with some regularity. So yes, it's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
yeah. What
um,
any of your final thoughts on Fargo? Any of your last thoughts?
so I had forgotten how much I really loved that movie until, like I said, like I pulled the new edition out and watched that, and
Yeah.
just wanting more, I dove into season 5, and this was just such an amazing season. Like I think I had gotten kind of lost. Not that the season with Chris Rock wasn't great, but it felt different. It felt like that gangster kind of like Godfather kind of like thing, like Goodfellas, Casino, and like I've never really been into movies like that. I know
No.
it's crazy for me as an Italian to be like, oh, Godfather, whatever, but they kind
Well,
of lost me a little bit during that season. It was very well written, but it just wasn't
me too.
Fargo to me.
Me
This
too. It
season kind of
wasn't.
brought it back, back to
Yeah.
basics. I think maybe that's why there were so many references to the movie to be like, listen, we're bringing this back to what you love about Fargo, and,
Maybe. I mean, according to Noah Hawley, he said that the reason there were so many references is because so much time had passed, he felt like he could add things without anybody suggesting that he was copying. Like he's
so you
paying
say time has
homage
passed since season 4, or time has passed since the film?
the film.
Okay. I want to say
Yeah.
the film was like 1996, 95, 94, 96,
I think it was six,
somewhere in
seven.
there.
I think it was 1996,
I threw
1997.
out
Because
3 dates and they were all wrong.
yeah, no, you said
Yeah.
96, but like it was released right before I moved to New Jersey for the first time, and every single person I met was like, "Oh my God, do the accent. Do you know Fargo? Can you do the accent?"
That's because it's an objectively fun accent to
I
say
know,
and
it
hear,
is. It
And if you
is.
can
It
hear
is.
somebody authentically do more than just, oh yeah, you betcha. I just looked it up. It's 1996. But yes, like it's a fun accent. And you don't
It
hear
is a fun
enough of it
accent.
in these shows or
No.
movies either. Like you might
No.
have a character that like really pushes it, but not usually. In the film, there was, the Marge Gunderson character definitely talked with that accent, but it was subtle. And
Oh,
then
it was, yeah.
uh I guess there was those two, the hookers who have sex with Steve Buscemi. They're like, oh
Go
yeah, yeah,
Bears.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
Go
little
Bears,
one.
yeah,
Go Bears.
go Bears. Um, yeah. I watched
So
something
funny.
recently, and I wish I remember what it was. I'm gonna try to run through the things in my head that I saw recently. There was something where the main character was, or the villain, was a very deliberate Marge Gunderson. It was definitely like a take on her, and
Really? The
yeah, I
villain?
wish I remember I don't know if it was the villain or I want to say it was the villain. There's something I watched recently where it was very like I picked up on it almost immediately. I was like, wow, there's a lot of parallels here. And then I Googled it and sure enough, they were like, this is a very deliberate, sort of a reference to Fargo. Um, I wish I remembered. If I
Maybe
remember it,
we'll.
but I'll Google it before the next episode and I'll say something next time we all talk. But yeah. Kate's
Yeah, I
Kate's
can't find
googling
it.
away, so I'm trying to talk while she does
I
that.
apologize. Yeah, I can't find it.
No,
I can't find it.
I'll figure it out because I'll run through the shows that I've watched recently, and then
Okay.
I'll see it and I'll be like, oh yeah, of course. But
Here's a question
um,
for you. Have you ever heard the Coen brothers comment on Fargo the series?
no,
I've not I've not ever heard them even acknowledge it. Now, I don't read articles, you know,
I mean,
interviews
I
with them,
assume it
but
has to have their sign off. Like
I
they're
assume.
listed as like executive producers or something.
Are they?
Uh,
Do the Coen
I saw them in
brothers
the
like,
credits. It could just be based on the story by, but um, there's no way they do this without their sign off.
yeah, I would think so. I can't find it.
Yeah.
Dang.
So
I don't know.
those are my final thoughts on Fargo season 5. Comes with a very high recommendation from me because
Yeah.
this is a season that is, I believe, independent from the rest of the series. I don't think you have to watch the film or seasons 1 through 4, but if you want
No.
to, you're not gonna you won't regret your time on any of this
No.
stuff.
You'll be very happy, in fact.
So
Yeah.
what's up
And
next? Oh, go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry.
what are we watching next? I was just gonna say, what are we watching next? I think
Okay.
we decided Scott Pilgrim.
Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, I believe, is the title of it. It's the sequel.
Yeah.
You're gonna start it off thinking it's a remake, but it's actually a sequel to Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
I think it's so cool that they did
Yeah,
that. And
yeah,
it's not what you expect.
yeah, exactly.
Not what you
So
expect.
we'll talk more about that on the next show.
Yeah. I can't wait. All right, my friend. See you next time.